what's going on, you guys? One of my subscribers asked me to do this video a while ago, and I figured it's the right time to do it now. Being that, there's a lot of news speculating who Wilder's going to fight next. Could be Brian Jennings. Could be his mandatory Alexander Povetkin. He recently had a fight with Johan Duhaupas. And, it's been a big year for him overall. He won a WBC title early this year against Mr. Byrne. And then he beat Eric Molina, in a fight that a lot of people just thought he was going to dominate, ended up being a good fight. And his last fight against Duhaupas, that was a good fight too. Actually, it was a very competitive fight. Both of those fights were a lot more competitive than the Stavern fight, even though Stavern survived. Now, I made a video on Wilder a couple years ago, like 2 years ago when I started the channel. I made a video about Deontay Wilder. It wasn't really well received, but I don't care. It was an honest video. It was honest, just like I always do. I'm going to be honest, even though he's an American heavyweight. He's an African American heavyweight. I had to be honest. I felt in that video at that time, a guy that's 30 wins in with 30 knockouts and no losses shouldn't be fighting guys like Nikolai Further. A guy that he was fighting around the time I did that video. And you're knocking all these guys out in 4 rounds or so. At this point, you shouldn't be fighting those type of guys with that kind of record. You just shouldn't be. You should have already been in the ring with Klitschko and a Povetkin or a Fury or whoever was on top at that time a couple years back. I was excited for the guy, and I still am. I don't want him to lose because he's from America, I have that bias. I want the guy from here to win, and I want an American heavyweight champion, a real heavyweight champion, not just a WBC. But I want the guy to fight some real fighters at the same time. I don't want him to go in there and fight a bunch of bums because just about every other top heavyweight could do the same thing he's doing, So that was my argument in the video, and it wasn't well received, but it doesn't really matter. Now, moving on, all right? I feel like now he's stepped up. He's been slowly stepping up. It's still a lot of fighters that he could be fighting. I think Malik Scott at that time was a step up. I still question whether or not he flopped in that fight because it wasn't a clean punch. And Deontay Wilder has been in the ring with Stavern. He's been in the ring with Molina, guy that took bombs from Wilder all fight. Duhaupas, another guy that took bombs from Wilder all fight. Yet Malik Scott got in the ring with him and falls on the ground. The first punch that connected, and it didn't even hit his face. It hit his gloves, and he didn't get back up. All right, so you still got to question that fight. But Malik Scott was supposed to be, at that time, a huge step up. Malik Scott only had 1 loss. Most people viewed him as the more skilled boxer between the two, even though Wilder had the punching power. Malik Scott was more skilled. A lot of people thought he was more skilled leading up to that. And that fight was disappointing, right? But he's gotten in the ring with Stavern. And with Molina and Duhaupas, we see that Wilder has a great left hook. We seen him, face a little adversity, get hurt. Guys have fought him and backed him up, okay? We seen more leg movement from him. We seen more speed from him. We seen overall more, we see more of Deontay Wilder's talent in his more recent fights. Okay, he's had a tougher time with guys, and at least we're seeing that as he gradually upgrades in the talent that he's fighting. But there's still plenty of other heavyweights that he has not fought, that he could have fought while he had 20-0, while he was 20-0 or 25-0 or 30-0, And a lot of people still question. A lot of people still don't think he's the real deal, by beating Mr. Byrne. And even though Stavern was a champion and he was a good heavyweight, he was not a top 5 heavyweight. when they fought. He was not a top 5 heavyweight, you know. But it was an upgrade, but he was not a top 5 heavyweight. You know, there's still a lot of other heavyweights that most people believe is better than Stavern, because Stavern didn't fight anybody outside of Chris Arreola, you know. So people are questioning, and they're still going to question. Now, moving forward, all right, we know that Povetkin is mandatory, right? A lot of people feel that Povetkin is going to knock Deontay Wilder out, especially if you're judging based off Povetkin's most recent performances. I mean, did you see this guy against Mike Perez? You know, Manuel Charr, Carlos Takam. These guys, he all knocked out after the Klitschko loss. But the thing that I noticed about Povetkin is he looks like a bodybuilder now. Whereas when he fought Klitschko, he's more like on a chubby side, you know? And now he looks like a professional bodybuilder. Like he's Jack Diesel now, you know? He was always a big guy, but there's a difference in his physique. A clear, obvious difference. In each fight, you look at the man, because I've looked. You know, I've watched several times. You know, I've seen a Manuel Charr fight, and he looked different from the Klitschko fight. But, you know, it wasn't crazy difference, but he looked different. Then the Takam fight, he looked even more, you know, cut up. And then now in the Perez fight, not only did he knock him out in the first round, but the guy is extremely brolic looking now, you know? And I said this before, like, listen, I'm not saying he's juicing or he's on steroids or anything like that. All I'm saying that I hope he's not. I hope he's not. All right? But there's a major difference in his physique. And if you don't believe so, then you're just a fanboy, you know, because there's clearly something different about this guy. And if he's knocking guys out, especially guys like Mike Perez, a guy that gave Jennings a good, tough fight, you know, he had a tough fight with Carlos Takam. Carlos Takam never got knocked out. Carlos Takam is a pretty solid boxer. Povetkin is like annihilating these people right now. And if you judge him based on that, most people think that he's going to destroy Deontay Wilder, you know. I think if he were to fight Wilder, though, I think he would be Wilder's toughest opponent. But the thing is, too, you got to understand, those guys Povetkin knocked out are not like Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder got the length, the height, and he knows how to use it pretty well, and he has a lot of punching power. And defensively, Povetkin is not the best fighter defensively. You know what I'm saying? And if Wilder knows how to clinches, like he knows how to hold, you know, not as well as Klitschko does, but, you know, if Povetkin actually get close enough to Wilder, you better believe Wilder's going to hold on to him. And, you know, you tie Povetkin up, he really doesn't do anything. You know, he kind of just like falls into it and lets you tie him up. He's not really good at punching himself out of holds. He's not good at it. But Povetkin brings the problem of actually getting up under Wilder. And when Wilder fatigues later in the fight, Povetkin's going to still be coming. Plus, he has the punching power to knock guys out with one punch. We've seen it. All right. So it's a very dangerous fight for both of us. Now, as far as the time is concerned, it's real confusing because that fight that Povetkin has coming up in November, Wilder claims that's his mandatory. He's supposed to fight Povetkin now. But Wilder claims he does not want to wait for Povetkin, and that Povetkin has a fight schedule against Wok next month. And Wilder does not want to wait until that fight is over. Okay? So he's getting ready to schedule another fight in January, probably before Povetkin has his fight in November. All right? I don't know if that's going to get him out of his mandatory match, you know, if he's going to be stripped. It probably not. From what I read, this is just gonna, if he does fight in January against a Brian Jennings, it won't be for the title, as far as what I read. Okay, um, but who knows? As far as the Brian Jennings fight, one thing about Povetkin, I don't know why he won't pull out of this fight with Wak. I haven't seen this guy that he's fighting. I saw an article on Boxing Scene that he's sparring, he's getting ready for their fight. He's fighting, sparring with Glaskov in the gym. I saw the pictures of that. I actually haven't seen Wak fight yet. I don't know. I know he's very tall. I know he's long. I think maybe Povetkin might be fighting this guy to help himself prepare, because even though a lot of people feel that Povetkin's going to win this fight, Povetkin, should be prepared for Deontay Wilder as well. Wilder's been looking a little bit better, a little bit more slick, a little bit more elusive in there. And maybe Povetkin wants to prepare for that. Maybe he wants to have a fight with a tall fighter before he gets in there with Deontay Wilder. All right, so maybe that's the reason why he doesn't pull out of it. I say, why risk the fight with Wak here for no title if you can just pull out of this fight and then get in the ring with Deontay Wilder right away. So I don't know why he doesn't do that, but he's not going to do it. So Wilder might be fighting Brian Jennings. Like, this is a fight that a lot of us here in America wants to see. Okay, I've wanted to see this fight for a little while now. Okay, because I've been watching them both come up, and I think it's a very tough fight to call. Because Brian Jennings is a pretty skilled boxer. Not too much experience, but he's a well-rounded boxer. He's a well-rounded fighter. Obviously not as big as Wilder, not as big of a puncher as Wilder. But I think he's slightly more skilled. The problem with Brian Jennings is that he takes way too long to get going in a fight. Okay? He spends half of a fight trying to figure you out. And the thing about the Klitschko fight, I think he could have done more to beat Klitschko. I really think he could have, but I think he was trying to survive more than actually win the fight, Look good against Klitschko. Like, listen, I look better against Klitschko than these most recent fighters, which is still not enough because you should be fighting to win the fight. And what I saw in Brian Jennings that night was a solid performance. You survived, but you really didn't have a chance of winning the fight on the cards, So Brian Jennings is going to have to bring the fight to Deontay Wilder. If Wilder doesn't hurt him or knock him out, which I don't think he will, Wilder's going to have a tough time against Jennings in the second half of the fight. It's very hard to beat Brian Jennings in the second half of the fight because his work rate is insane. Okay, stamina is not one thing we're going to see, one issue we're going to see with Brian Jennings. Okay, but the problem is he takes too long. And Wilder is definitely going to be winning the earlier rounds of the fight. Okay, it's the second half of the fight you got to question. All right. Not a bad fight though. So, I'm not really disappointed either way. But as far as Deontay Wilder overall, listen, I think I've seen improvements in him. I think he is a tough fight for anyone. He's always going to be dangerous for whoever he faces. The guy has power. He's not completely relying on that right hand no more. Before when he was like the first 20 to 30 fights he was strictly relying on that big right hand, popping the jab out there, just trying to land that big right hand. Things that I noticed in the Duhaupas fight, I think Duhaupas came out with the right idea, just coming up close, keeping that tight high guard, and just throwing a jab to try to get close to Wilder, and it worked. But outside of that, he really didn't have anything. Wilder was doing things like he was punching, he was throwing jabs at Duhaupas, and I'm gonna just keep saying Johan because I can't stand saying this guy's name. I'm gonna say Johan. He was throwing jabs at Johan and trying to open him up for he could shoot that straight right down the middle. And he was also pulling his gloves away for he could shoot that straight right down. He was landing that. Johan had a great chin. This guy, his chin was insane. Wilder could not get him out of here. And I thought the stoppage was all right, because we don't want to see another Magomed situation here. I mean, Duhapa was, he was surviving, he was surviving. He had a great chin and everything, but he really wasn't bringing the fight to Wilder that much. He had a couple rounds on the second half that were good, but at that stage, he was doing nothing but being a punching bag. And it's no point how many times you're going to get hit in the face by Deontay Wilder, But one thing I did notice with Wilder is that he didn't like getting hit to the body. And if you look at the fight, even go back to watching the fight, I didn't really see a lot. I've seen people on YTBC talking about this fight, but I didn't really see anyone say this. But Duhapar was landing, going to the body, and Wilder would drop his guard. But Duhapar didn't really take advantage and go up top after that, But whenever he went to the body, it definitely bothered Wilder. And Brian Jennings is a good body puncher. If you look at fights with like Arthur Splika, a guy that he stopped because he was going to his body, that's Brian Jennings is a pretty good body puncher. And I think if they see that, if they actually do fight, that might be a problem for Deontay Wilder, because Jennings does the same thing that Duhapar was doing in that fight. He has a high guard, and he comes in shooting the jab. And, Jennings has very, very long arms, all right? I think, he has 84 inches long, whatever. He has long arms. And that's one thing that I noticed about Deontay Wilder. He does not like getting hit to the body. I mean, nobody does, but that was one thing that bothered Wilder that I noticed, that something that someone else can take advantage of, okay? But overall, I think he's gotten better. I think he's a tough fight for anyone. I just want to see it. I think, at first, I think Povetkin, when I heard that he was fighting Povetkin, I was like, Povetkin's going to destroy him. But I think Wilder has a good chance against Povetkin. He does have a chance to win that fight because Povetkin is so hittable. But outside of that, Povetkin's going to be tough because Povetkin got that power right now. He's just knocking guys out crazy. And Wilder is not fighting anyone that has that similar style as for Povetkin. He hasn't fought anyone to prepare him for that kind of fight. So these are the issues that I have with Wilder, And I think Wilder, I don't think he's great, I don't think he's the best heavyweight, but I think he's better than his handlers give him credit for. If his handlers and Al Heyman or whoever, if they were to give him better fights regularly, he would be a better fighter. I think he would look better too. But since they're barely making him step up in matches, they give me, they just give me the feeling that they're protecting him until he gets in the ring with Klitschko or Fury or whoever is holding the title at that time. And if he wins, if he happens to win the fight, then he wins. But they don't want to take the baby steps that they need to take in order to improve Wilder as a fighter overall. He is good and he is stepping up barely, but he's still not fighting the guys that most people want to see him fight. So that's how I feel. I think he's good. Just like Leo Santa Cruz. I feel the exact same way. I think Leo Santa Cruz is better than his handlers believe. Because if his handlers believe that he was better, or he believed that he was better than what he actually is, then he would probably have the confidence to get in the ring with better fighters, and improve as a fighter. But we're not really seeing that from him. And we're not really seeing that from Deontay Wilder, He's just, fighting guys like Eric Molina and Johan Duhapar, guys that before the fight starts that he's going to knock out. He's going to knock those guys out. All right? So that's just how I feel. Spoke long enough on Wilder. Leave comments and make sure you guys subscribe.